Hey Kirkwood and the rest of the internet, we have another bonus presentation in our Mosaic series. And like we did the second week of the series where we focused in on one particular kind of diversity, that week it was socioeconomic diversity and how to empower those who may be poorer. We're going to do the same thing today with a different group. So let me introduce to you Lacey Harmon, who you may know from our kids ministry or being super involved with the Cub Scouts, but neither of those are reasons why she's here with me today.
Yes.
The reason she's here with me today is what she does as a vocation. So tell them what you do, and then that will let them know what we're going to focus on.
Okay. So as Chris mentioned, my name is Lacey Harmon. I work for a local school division, and my official title is Coordinator of Student Services. But basically what that means is that I assist in the training and instruction of special education teachers and staff across the school division to support students with disabilities.
So our focus today is tapping into Lacey's experience and expertise in regard to persons who have disabilities. And actually, that's a good place to start. So let's start with nomenclature, because even in my lifetime, it has changed a lot. Like, what's the preferred terminology here? And as I was reading up in preparation for today, I noted that there are some terms or phrases that are more empowering to those with disabilities, and there are some that are unintentionally condescending or disempowering. So why don't you walk us through terminology?
Sure. So in my profession, working with children, we always refer to those as students with disabilities. So that language is very intentional because it puts the person in front of the disability. So we call that person first language. And so in that case, as you mentioned, it's more empowering to our individual people, and we want to see them as a whole person and not just what their disability is, because as we know, there is much more to a person than the things that they can't do. There are many, many skills that every person possesses, and strengths and weaknesses with that. So always putting that person first. Another way you could say that is individual with disability, person with disability, or name their disability. But in common language, we wouldn't just walk up to someone and say, hello, person with a disability. But as you mentioned, there is language that is much more supportive and empowering than to just recognize the disability.
So let's stand back, and I want you to paint for us kind of the 10,000-foot view, because persons with disabilities, it covers a huge spectrum, right? You got all kinds of disabilities represented, even within the students that you work with. So just give us some macro categories maybe and examples of in those categories of what we mean by disabilities.
Sure. So like you mentioned, it is a very wide range. And of course, I think a lot of us are familiar with orthopedic impairments, which can include some physical disabilities. You have speech and language impairments, which include any kind of communication deficit. That could be like articulation or even just the ability to express yourself. And I have moments some days where I have a hard time expressing myself. So there are disabilities. I think many of us are familiar with autism. There are developmental disabilities. So usually, in my world, sometimes we'll find students eligible as having a developmental delay. And these are our children typically between the ages of 2 and 6, where there's some delay in either communication, physical ability, cognitive ability, social emotional, but it's a little too early to really tell that they have a specific diagnosis, but there is an impact on how they're performing in school. So this is a way to get some supports and services in place for them. Other disabilities, there are students with emotional disabilities or people with emotional disabilities. Sometimes those disabilities do turn into mental health conditions later on in life, but again, sometimes those conditions cannot be diagnosed until a person is a teenager or later.
Right.
Other disabilities, I'm trying to think of all of the different kinds. There are learning disabilities, of course. In the education world, again, there's something called other health impairment, and so that can be a condition that could include diabetes, it could include ADHD, or any other host of medical conditions that might impact the student to be able to access schoolwork for some reason. So that can put some support in place for them as well. So as students progress through school and they transition into adulthood, in school we have something that's called an IEP, an Individualized Education Plan, and that is the plan that provides special education services. As the students progress and graduate from high school and move into adulthood, then they are typically covered under Section 504 with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they can get accommodations and supports in the workplace or in higher education.
Okay. We're going to come back around to sort of what you're trying to accomplish with your students and the life you're setting them up for as adults. We're going to come back to that.
Sure.
But first, let's talk about an ism,
Okay.
right? And it's an ism I would suspect some people, but maybe not all people, are aware of. They're more aware of racism or ageism, but there's such a thing called ableism. So will you talk to us about what ableism is and how it may show up and we're not aware of it?
Sure. So I think that it's pretty much any time that someone who is able to complete a task is somehow put in a position over a person who's not able to complete that task for any number of reasons. And so again, I just go back to that person first language. When you're looking at someone with a disabling condition, there are many things that that person can do. And there are more and more opportunities for education and promoting what an individual can do these days, both in school and in the workplace and in higher education, than the focus again just on the disability. But what ableism can end up doing is an individual with a disability struggles with many things throughout their life, and sometimes that will impact their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-determination, their desire or belief that they can achieve the same as others who are more able than they are. And so that in turn leads to decreased happiness in life, decreased opportunities for work, sometimes lower income, and just a lifelong struggle with their own perception of their abilities. So, and I'm glad that you asked that question, because I don't think that it is something that we often recognize that is existing in our world, because I also think that individuals with disabilities don't always know what their rights are and how they can advocate for those rights. And a lot of times you can make simple accommodations and adjustments to make someone more successful in a job or in the education field. Then it's just simple little adjustments can make them just level the playing field and open up those opportunities for them.
Yeah, I would say people who are part of the Kirkwood family know this. I'm a person with a disability, and what you described about how that affects you and how it changes the way you perceive yourself. I mean, it's taken me my entire life really to come to terms with that. So I'm very glad that you shared that with everyone, because from my personal experience, that's certainly been true for me. So it kind of leads into the next question, which is beyond what you've said about ableism. Just tell us some common misunderstandings or stereotypes about those who might have a disability. And I grant you, this is a little tough because disability is such a big term.
Absolutely.
So you can pick some specific examples if you want, but talk to us about misunderstanding and stereotypes of the disabled.
Sure. So one misunderstanding that I see a lot is that, again, from an education standpoint, a student might be fighting or working with, I should say, an invisible disability. So the individual sitting in front of you looks like every other child in the classroom. There's no visible physical differences. And so often there's misunderstanding if that student is not responding or understanding in the same way as their peers. So there can be a lot of misunderstanding around that if an individual doesn't look different. For individuals who may look different or may verbalize different or may not even verbalize at all, just because of that difference does not mean that they're intelligent and have a whole host of strengths. So I can give a specific example of I support a program called Project Search. The program is specifically for students who are postgraduates from high school. So some of our students with disabilities are able to stay in school until they're 22. And so sometimes as part of their postgraduate program, they enroll in Project Search. And this is a full-day internship where they're learning vocational skills. They're building their skills and strengths. We call them soft skills. Those communication skills, ability to follow directions, work with others, and is a jump start to their adult life and holding a job after high school. So in Project Search, we had a student with a communication device. And for the first couple weeks, we were working with him, trying to get to know him, and it was very difficult to communicate with him. And so his device was basically, you can envision an iPad, and he would have buttons that he would push on it to communicate. So it was a voice output device, and so that communicated for him. And so it was a little challenging to understand his strengths and weaknesses right off the bat. But as we got to know him, we realized that he was a rock star. Like we put him on the job with support, and before we even knew it, we realized that he knew what to do. He just couldn't communicate with us very effectively. And so breaking down that barrier opened up this opportunity for this student, because at first he was looking to us for every little thing. What do I do next? What do I, where do I put this? But we started hiding from him. And he just took off. And it showed us that he was looking to us because that's how he had been taught. And then when we took ourselves out of the picture, but we're watching from the bushes, he was doing a fantastic job. And, so
that's a good lead into, let's follow that thought.
Okay.
So you just told me a success story, quote unquote, how what you do and your department positively impacted that student, right? Now I recognize that, again, disability is so wide. Success is probably very individualized based on who the student is or who the post-grad is.
Yes.
So think of a couple other examples where you or your department can look and say, man, we invested in that student, we cared for that student, and with their particular disability, man, we see that we really made a difference. It was success. Can you think of a few?
Oh, sure. I can think of a student that I worked with at the high school when I was a special ed teacher. And this student he did not love school. He was going through the motions because that's what
Sure.
the state of Virginia requires, and there is a stigma for not receiving a diploma, so he was really just in it for that, and maybe to get mom off his back. And so I worked with this student. In high school, we actually found that he did have a learning disability in math. So he had met all the other requirements for graduation, but he could not pass his math classes. And this became very depressing to him, very, you know, just disheartening for the whole family, because they really were unsure if he was going to graduate high school. So in working with him, we made some adjustments in the math class. We were able to make some adaptations to the curriculum. We were able to do some time after school. He got some tutoring, and he was able to do what he needed to do to get all of his requirements. And I still stay in touch with that student. He's married and has a baby now. I think he's about 25.
Wow.
But it's just when you see that small adjustments can just make such a big impact for the person, for the family, for their lives. And I told him, I always told him, he's very good with working with his hands. And I said, you're going to walk out of here with your diploma, and you're going to go make more money than I do. I guarantee it. Me with multiple degrees, college degrees. So, and I told him that. I said, degrees don't necessarily mean anything. I said, you know, he had a great work ethic, and he makes more money than I do. He went out of high school and started working for Dominion, and just took off from there, and is doing a great job.
Reminds me, your stories, so those two stories about those two students, reminds me of something the late Mother Teresa said, that really there are no great acts, there are just small acts done with great love. And that's what I hear you and your department doing for those students.
Yes.
Sometimes very small particular acts that suit their particular disability that has a tremendous impact because you're doing it out of care for that student.
Absolutely.
All right, so now we're gonna get very practical and down to earth. Not that it hasn't been, but I'm gonna ask you, the expert, for some pointers for us.
Okay.
First, we in our lives interact with people with disabilities all the time, and we may not even know, right, based on what we talked about so far. So if we're aware that we're interacting with somebody with a disability, how can we do that really well, where we treat them with dignity and respect, and maybe conversely tell us about some pitfalls to avoid, because I bet even well-intentioned, there are times that we may fall prey to them.
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is just treating everyone as an individual with their own set of individual needs. Sometimes disabilities can even be short-term. You know, if someone has surgery, you hold the door open for them to help them get through the doorway, or, you know, so just kindness and understanding that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. It's okay to ask someone if they need help. I think that that's something that, you know, we don't always know if we should or not. But if you see someone struggling with something, you know, it's okay to offer some help. If they say no, then that's fine.
Sure,
I was watching a video the other day of someone who had some kind of nervous system thing going on, and he could not, he was at a restaurant trying to bring the spoon to his mouth, and because of whatever was going on, he was shaking so much that the food kept falling off of his spoon back onto the plate. And so another young man was sitting across from him alone and just saw that he was having trouble and sat down and asked, "Can I help you?" And so he was able then to assist by holding his arm a little steadier so that he could get the food to his mouth. And I thought, you know, that's pretty personal, right? For a stranger. I just thought that was such a nice act of kindness. But also not to be afraid of of people who look different than you or talk differently than you, that everyone has their own way of communicating, and most individuals you're going to interact with are not going to be violent or, you know,
Right.
physically aggressive.
Right.
So there's no reason that you couldn't interact with that person, and just try to get to know them. What do you like to do? What are some activities that you enjoy, or you know, just find out about them. I think that that goes a long way as well.
That's good.
Some things to avoid, I would say making assumptions that they need help or that they need your assistance to step in.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I've learned over my career is wait time. I don't step in immediately. I watch to see what they're doing, if they're going to start the task, or if, you know, a student is going to tell me. Sometimes people need a little bit longer time to process their thoughts and then to be able to verbalize those thoughts. So just giving some time and hearing them out. And so I think those are the biggest things.
That's neat.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's bring it down and be even more particular, and let's talk about us as a church. So how can we be more sensitive to persons with disability? How can we be more welcoming? How can we be more inclusive? And how can we show persons with disability, whatever the disability is, that they are as valuable as we are, and their input matters as much as ours does.
Sure. Well, I have to say right off the bat that one of the things that drew me to Kirkwood was the welcoming warmth from the congregation. Immediately, it was felt when I walked in the door. My husband and I were new to the area, and we had grown up in a Presbyterian church and wanted to continue with a Presbyterian church. And people invited us to their homes. People invited us over for Easter dinner, knowing that our families are all in Ohio. So I will say that we already have that going for us.
Right, we're starting from a good place.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I have never met anyone who has not given me a big warm smile and, you know, just a welcome.
Yeah.
And we're happy you're here. So I think that that attitude, that culture that we already have here, just makes this a place for anyone to feel welcome and to feel that they have a voice. You know, so I would just say that beyond that, that really just listening to individual needs, or just being aware of, you know, who is in the congregation and what needs they might have. We can't always know, but we can probably assume that maybe having subtitles or you know, something like that is an easy accommodation that we can put in place for a variety of different needs. Obviously, we can see if someone's struggling to walk or move around the church, and people are always jumping in to help. I see lots of wonderful conversations going on, especially with people who are new to us. Just engaging in those conversations to find out, hey, what brought you in today? We're so glad you're here. And really, those things help make our church an inclusive environment for everyone. So I think that we have a lot of really wonderful things going on already. You know, if there is a specific need, just listening to what that is and brainstorming ideas about how we can accommodate. Sometimes we do get stuck in a mindset of this is the way it's always been done, and sometimes that excludes people. So by thinking creatively about, okay, this need has presented itself, how can we work together to help this person feel included? And even if it's just one person, it doesn't need to be a majority, because this one person is important to us. And we want to make sure that they feel at home here too.
Yeah, that's really good. So in preparation for today, I did some digging, and our denomination, the PCUSA, has a lot of really great resources on this subject. I was really struck by one article I read that was basically talking about why we need persons with disabilities in the congregation, fully involved, fully included, because the rest of us need it. And they talked about things like, and I'm sure you've seen this in your work, persons with disabilities often remind us how interdependent we are. And those of us who like to think of ourselves as fully able like to think of ourselves as very independent. But depending on what the disability is, right? I mean, I can tell you, like, being a person who's visually disabled, my kids know that if we're going anywhere in the car together, they sit in the front with me because they read street signs for me, because I can't. And at least not until it's too late and it would be very dangerous for me to make the turn. But that's interdependence, right? And there are other things in my own life as I manage my own disability where it shows up. But so often, we who are fully, or think we're fully able, we don't think that we need each other in the way that a person with a disability reminds us of. This article went on to say that another thing that the presence of persons with disability does is it slows you down. Like you were saying about not jumping in and waiting. So often a person with disability, things may take longer. The pace slows down, it decelerates, which is really healthy. Because so many of us live at a pace that is unhealthy or too fast, where we're accomplishing things, but it may not be altogether wise. And the reason that's true is because we're doing things, making decisions, progressing through tasks, just far too fast. And a person with a disability sometimes can remind us of that. So anyway, piggybacking on what you said, what I would want everyone to know is that in the body of Christ that we call church, a person with a disability is not just somebody to be cared for. They actually offer us insight and perspective, reminders that we might not have otherwise, right?
Absolutely. I think the perspective piece is really important, that they're just, someone might come from, just like you and I, we might come at an issue from completely different perspectives, and everyone's perspective is valuable. But to understand how someone with a disability has to interact with their world, the different ways that they need, the different things that they, strategies that help on a day-to-day basis. I think I feel like I'm learning from the people that I interact with every day, disabled and non-disabled. It doesn't matter, it's always another perspective to offer.
In my church in Michigan, we had a 40-ish year old person with Down syndrome and his wife. And they lived in a townhouse next to their parents, to one set of parents. They both were employed, and they both very faithfully came to church. They were in a small group together. And one of the profound effects they had on me personally, but I know that I'm not just speaking for me, I'm sure it's a lot of other people in that church, is they opened my eyes to what happiness is. What success is, what matters in life. It was very hard to have a bad day around them. And I know you know of what I speak, right?
Yes.
So that's the positive impact that these quote unquote disabled persons can have on us if we're open to embracing them and including them fully. The benefit is you can't anticipate it, but it's remarkable, right? And I'm sure you've seen that. All right, so we're going to finish by even getting more particular, because I asked Lacey to help us work through two disabilities that might be more common that we run into every day, and then maybe help us with some practical strategies or practices when we interact with persons that have those disabilities. So first, talk to us about, I think, what's been now, at least in, out in the common space, it's been called people on the spectrum, right? So this would include autism, Asperger's, first talk to us just broadly about what that condition is and maybe how it impacts the person who has it. But then help us know how we can really love that person, respect that person, interact with that person in a way that's congruent with that particular disability.
Sure. So autism is a spectrum. I've worked with kids who were at the higher end of that spectrum, taking AP Physics, and were probably smarter than I was as far as the academic stuff goes, but couldn't find their bus at the end of the day. So it's really interesting. And the saying goes, "You've met one person with autism. You've met one person with autism," because every single person with autism is very different. And so I've worked with students, again, who are very academically strong and could just process information and hold that information, and it was just amazing. And then I've worked with people with autism who could not verbalize their wants and needs, could not follow one-step directions, needed hand-over-hand assistance to complete basic tasks, and needed someone to help assist with their day-to-day functioning. So there's a very wide range. So individuals with autism typically struggle with communication, with socialization, just having a social exchange with someone else. It can impact intellectual ability, and those are the big ones. The social and the communication are the biggest impacts on individuals with autism. So sometimes you'll see individuals who might be humming or making noises repetitively. They may rock, or they may do things with their hands. They may pace back and forth. There are a lot of different behaviors, but those behaviors are self-stimulating to them, and it's helping to regulate their body. So again, most individuals you're going to encounter, they may have something that you'll see that they're doing, but it's not physically aggressive or violent in any way. But just know that those are things that they need to do to help themselves in that situation. And then the other thing is with the social skills, individuals with autism really struggle with the social communication. They don't understand puns or sarcasm or any play on the language as we like to do every day. So some things like that can be very difficult for an individual to understand. So being direct and clear in what you're asking for or trying to communicate is the best way. And sometimes we think maybe we're not being nice, or maybe it sounds mean because we're being direct, but that is really the kindest way to interact, because if you beat around the bush, so to say, they may not understand what you're asking them to do.
So for a person on the spectrum, and I realize that it's different with each person, but just broadly speaking, if we wanted to communicate with them that we care about them, something that might be more emotional, right? How could we do that in a way that suits their particular disability?
Sure. So you can just say it to some, and the repetition of that, I think sometimes there is a disconnect in trying to identify emotions and what that looks like and feels like. So repetition in that, it's always helpful to couple that with pictures, with visual representations. Sometimes with our students who really struggle with the emotional, identifying their emotions and then regulating their emotions, we have the smiley face scale that you might be familiar with. So, the lowest one being angry, and then you might have the sad face, and then you have like the neutral face, and then the very happy face, and it's usually a 5-point scale. So, so we teach students to identify how are you feeling, and then in turn, if you are feeling angry or sad, what are some things that you can do to help improve your attitude or your feeling or what it is that you're struggling with.
Yeah, that's good.
Because you'll also find that they may say that they're angry or sad, but they don't know how to tell you what it is that has made them angry or sad. And so that can really lead to even more feelings of, anger and sadness if we don't figure out what it is and make some changes for them. So, and then writing it down. Social stories or social narratives are a great way to reach individuals with autism because they have a very concrete understanding of the world. It's almost like a rule book for specific situations. So
okay.
You can say, just trying to think of a scenario. When I go to the lunchroom, I know that it is time for me to eat lunch. I will go up to the lunch lady, point to what I want to get for lunch, go to the cashier, and then I will sit down at this table. So it can be step by step like that.
Totally, yes.
Or it can also be to handle social situations. What do I do when someone says something that I don't like, or how do I respond to that? So those are three pretty tried and true strategies that work with the whole spectrum, really. That even works really well with people who are very high on the spectrum and people who are very low on the spectrum. But if you're moving toward the lower end of the nonverbal and intellectual functioning, you'll want to work more with pictures and visuals.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you did with autism, Asperger's, and the spectrum, do the same thing for us with Down syndrome and like conditions. Give us an overview of what that condition is like, what the disability is like, but then help us know how we can interact with someone who has that disability in a way that is respectful to them, in a way that they'll receive really well, and in a way where they feel as fully human as we are.
Sure. So Down syndrome, similar to autism, it has a spectrum in itself, a wide range of abilities and skills that an individual might possess. So some defining characteristics of Down syndrome are usually an intellectual disability, but I will not say always, because I have met and worked with some students who did not have an intellectual disability. But there is also some physical features that come along with Down syndrome. Usually individuals are a bit shorter. You might notice some facial features, low muscle tone, just meaning that their muscles don't fully develop, or sometimes even they are, how do I say, more flexible or bendier.
Oh, okay.
So there are aspects of that, but individuals with Down syndrome are, they want that independence. They want to, live their lives and be just, with their same age peers or same age adults. And so, providing opportunities for that, including these individuals in activities such as sports or after-school activities or community activities if they're an adult living in the community. I think there's always a desire for the socialization aspect and to feel accepted and as part of a group. So I've worked with an individual with Down syndrome who was quite successful in school. He did graduate with an applied studies diploma, which means that some of the curriculum had to be modified for him. But he went on to go to a community college, is currently enrolled in a community college, and plays football for that college.
Wow.
So just to give you an idea of, how he's, if you talk to him, he is not shy. He will tell you all about this is what I want to do. He makes YouTube videos.
Wow.
He promotes him just awareness about disabilities, and you know, he makes it more about what you can do. And he's really, I've just seen him really just inspire the community and the school to include all students in their activities. So, so again, just with anything, you know, listen, show kindness, hear what they're really asking for or trying to communicate, and find ways to help, you know, make those small adjustments so that a person with Down syndrome can feel included in the activity. You know, just having that sense of belonging is so important. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what everybody watching this doesn't know is that Lacey has been a real trooper because her voice started to give out, and she has stuck it out and gotten through all the questions that she and I had prearranged. So thank you for today.
Yes.
Thank you for giving us the gift of your experience and your expertise and helping us care about those who might have disabilities the way that you do and the way your department does, and for sticking it out and being able to make it through all the questions.
Sure, of course. Happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
You good? Thank you.